Hi, Dr. Reagan Robertson, CCO of Productive Dentist Academy here, and I have a question for you. Are you finding it hard to get your team aligned to your vision, but you know you deserve growth just like everybody else? That's why we've created the PDA Productivity Workshop. For nearly 20 years, PDA workshops have helped dentists just like you align their teams, get control of scheduling, and create productive practices that they love walking into every day. Just imagine how you will feel when you know your schedule is productive, your systems are humming, and your team is aligned to your vision. It's simple, but it's not necessarily easy. We can help. Visit productivedentist.com/workshop. That's productivedentist.com/workshop to secure your seats now.
Young dentists and their thought of having to be in debt, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, and to get out, they think the only way that they can practice dentistry is to go into a DSO.
Welcome to Investment Grade Practices Podcast, where we believe private practice dentists deserve to get the lifestyle today while building an asset for tomorrow. Join your host, Victoria Peterson, to design the practice of your dreams and secure your financial independence. Let's get started.
Welcome back to Investment Grade Practices. I'm your host, Victoria Peterson, with my incredibly dynamic business partner, Dr. Bruce Baird. Hey, Bruce.
Hi, how are you, Victoria? Good to see you this morning.
It's great to see you too. This has been a joy to launch our third podcast, and you and I have been talking a lot about what is an investment grade practice. What is the IGP model that Productive Dentist Academy coaches and teaches? How do we optimize practices and things like that? And you said something so profound the other day and so interesting. I wanted to bring you on as a guest to share with our audience your perspective of dentistry right now and what the opportunities are for not only the sellers, but the buyers. Where do you see the marketplace today?
Yeah, in talking about what's happened over the past, 10 to 15 years, with the DSO and the aggregation of practices and forming larger group practices and that type of thing, that's got a lot of people scared. And what I've come to realize, and I sold to a DSO when I was 55 years old because I had built this huge practice and didn't really, myself and Dr. Busky, and we didn't really know where we would be going next as far as a transition or whatever. And so we ended up selling to a DSO. And it was fine. I could say, Heartland Dental, the group that I sold to, have done a good job with their docs. But when you throw "but" in, that means everything else you said before is irrelevant. And what I'll tell you is I've had the opportunity now to watch our doctors, senior docs, I'm going to call senior docs and young docs. I've watched our senior doctors having the same issues and the same problems and not knowing what to do. Where do I go when I'm ready to transition? How do I find a dentist that's interested? And, so my job or my thought process has always been, I love old docs because I'm an old doc. And how can I help them? How can we help them find the right doctors? I then flip the switch and go to the young docs. Well, I had an opportunity to lecture at my alma mater, University of Texas San Antonio Dental School. This was, maybe 8 weeks ago. And what I've come, and we had a third of the entire dental school class from freshmen to seniors at that talk. And I probably spoke for about an hour on how great it is to be a dentist. And, and you made the right decisions because these guys and gals, which more are female than male, but they really have lost some of their entrepreneurial spirit. And when I say that, it wasn't intentional on their part. The DSO market all across the board has gotten access to the dental schools in a big way. And they bring the speakers in, they bring people in, and it's something that is it concerns me. I love young dentists. I taught at Baird. I taught down in San Antonio at the implant preceptorship, and I just love that. I just love young dentists and their thought of having to, be in debt, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, and to get out, they think the only way that they can practice dentistry is to go into a DSO. And there are some that go in and open their own practice and they're in a different maybe financial situation. They still want to, but what they're hearing over and over again is how tough it is, the difficulties of the debt. And I'll be honest, Victoria, I mean, debt is neither good nor bad. It's the cost of doing business. And what I share with these young dentists is there's great opportunity out there. There's amazing opportunity for you to go into a high value fee-for-service practice. And when I say fee-for-service, I'm not just 100% no PPOs. That's not the deal. But there are great practices out there that need great new young dentists to come in and help fulfill their transition of the senior doc. And so what I've been working on are those things. So I've really been enjoying this whole process with the old and the young.
I love it. And I want to put a pin on a couple of the notes that you said there. Number one, you said, when I was 55, my partner and I looked around. We grew, I think your business was probably 4 million, 5 million at the time. And, you look around and you're like, wow, how would we find a third partner who could come in and pay us $1 million, $1.5 million? How would we sustain that model? And so you really put a spotlight on options for selling dentists a decade ago were much different than they are today. There's new financial tools, there's new estate planning tools, there's new ways that private practice, I call them legacy doctors. So they're the top shelf clinicians. They really do things in a particular way. They're a lot like you. They're high tech, high touch. The challenges are threefold that I see. Number one, a young student coming out of school doesn't have the experience to do lasers and CEREC and this and that. Now, some of the schools are getting very progressive and they do. So you've got to be able to mentor and bring that up. The debt that you spoke of, there's a big misperception about debt. So I'm glad that you brought that up, that it's neither here nor there. It's the cost of doing business. But third is, you said, I then worked for another 10 years. So I'm 55 years old. I'm looking for my options. What's my succession plan? Is probably the question.
Sure.
And so you sold to a DSO and you worked for 10 years. I think this is the number one mistake that selling doctors make. I was talking to a doctor. Actually, I was talking to a consultant. I was coaching a coach up in Michigan. And she said, yeah, I'm working with this doctor. His junior partner bought in 10 years ago, and the senior doctor is going to retire in July. This is January. He's going to retire in July, and they haven't told the team, and they haven't started searching for a candidate. They figured they would go to the school and get a graduate. And I said, well, first of all, he won't retire in 6 months unless he's walking away and just throwing the keys. It's just impossible to get someone onboarded, integrated, and get through the paperwork in 6 months. So you made a really big point. You got to start thinking about this 10 years in advance. So if you're 50, it's not too early to think about where am I going to be when I'm 60, 65. Do you think?
No. I mean, you always begin with the end in mind. And it doesn't matter what age you are. If you're setting goals, like we do at Productive Dentist, and like I've done my whole life, I'm setting, 1 year goals, 5-year goals, and then longer projections of where do I want to be in 10, 20 years. And it's important to have that end in mind, not that you're ready to end. I would start this process very early on. I see a lot of young doctors in their, I'm going to say late 30s and even into their mid 40s that are selling to DSOs because the offer is more than they ever thought they would get for a practice. Unfortunately, if you look at your revenue that you're going to receive, it's very different when you're in private practice and you're in control as opposed to in a DSO environment. You might be making 25%, 28%, or 30% of what you've been doing. But when you were running your own business, you were taking home 40%. That
Right.
doesn't sound like a big difference, that 10%, but trust me, if you're a producer and you're a great dentist and you're not planning on retiring for 15 years or 20 years, then it's huge dollars difference. And so what you ended up doing is passing the buck to, let them run my practice, which that really doesn't happen. You're still going to be running it, but you're also going to make less revenue. People say, yeah, Bruce, but I got $1 million. Well, $1 million in 2000 was pretty well, was really nice. Today, by the way, that's worth about 510,000. So, unless you have a really good plan on what to do with that million, and you can turn it into a great return of 8-10% over yearly, then you don't have any business selling your business. And I would much rather see us bring in young docs into that environment that are trained, that are good businessmen, that also have an entrepreneurial spirit, that want to be in their own practice or in a small group or even a large group, which we're going to see more and more of. But you're bringing in these dentists to help, and with the opportunity for them to be able to buy in and the old guys transition away, the money's available.
Hey, I thought of a new phrase the other day, Bruce.
What's that?
The OG meets the IG.
The OG, the old guy meets the
Instagrammers.
yeah, okay. Well, that makes sense.
OG, IG talk, and then I think what I love in the conversations, and you and I are going into on, and I hope every listener does this. Bruce and I go into executive strategy and planning every year, even though we're talking every month, every week. We set aside 2 or 3 days where we work on the business and we look at who are we today, where do we need to be tomorrow, what's happening, and our entire company is pivoting because of that into this language of how do we build an investment grade practice? And you're really putting a great spotlight on the fact that when you get burned out as an owner, and trust me, you and I have both been burned out more than once.
Sure.
Thank God we got each other, because we fire each other up, right? But what are your options? So you've invested in yourself, your clinical education, and really that's where the G and IGP comes in. Is it's time to grow the value beyond yourself, into your team, into your associates. I saw a transition performer the other day, a doctor selling his practice, and I cringed because I know what I know and I know what you know. And the broker said, basically, don't pay attention to last year's revenues. They were down because the doctor chose to have a little more life balance for personal reasons. He cut back from 20 days a month to 17 days a month. We've convinced the owner doctor to work 20 days a month for the next 4 years. Therefore, the revenues will go up. And I just I bursted a blood vessel, because I thought, that's what building an investment grade practice is all about. I get to live my lifestyle. I get to choose it. And I did the math. All they did was they took a doctor who was producing $5.10 an hour, added 3 more days to his schedule, and now he's going to produce $4.26 an hour. He's not going to increase productivity. You just don't. So thank you for being here today. What would you tell young dentists that are out there? Let's say that they graduated and they've been, honing their skills and getting their speed up. How do they find high quality? Because there's, that end of the equation too, young associates getting burned by going into practices where the doctor doesn't delegate, they promise partnership and it doesn't happen. What encouragement would you give them?
It's, first of all, what I would tell somebody, a young dentist just getting out of school, is the same thing I told myself 42 years ago. I said, I want to learn more. I want to learn everything I can. I want to become clinically, I want to become a master, and I want to know how to do full mouth rehabs. I want to know how to place implants. That was my decision. I would say, as a young dentist, pick what you love. You may not know what you love right off the bat, but get involved in education. That may be when you get out, picking up speed. I went in the military for 4 years. It was great for me. I was able to pick up, and I've never been slow even in dental school, but I was able to pick up skills that I didn't have. And when I got out, I was ready for private practice. So if a young dentist is going to go into a DSO, one of my good friends wrote his doctorate thesis on job satisfaction for a dentist in a DSO. And we realized that about 70%, even more, are not really all that happy in that DSO environment. Plus, as a young dentist, you're going in, you don't have any assets. The DSO is going to continue to grow, and basically you're going to end up working for Walmart. So have a game plan. Now, how do you find the investment grade practice? Well, there's a lot of them. I would say out of the 70% of the practices that are still left that aren't involved in a DSO, I'll go 80-20. 80% are not investment grade practices, but 20% are, meaning they're, again, high value, high touch, high technology, the place that I would want to go if I'm getting out of school. You could open up your own practice at some point, but you have the clinical skills to do it and the business skills. And so those are the things that we're working on teaching young dentists of the business skills. Clinically, we've got programs that are put together to help the dentist increase their skill levels clinically. And then we're going to the old guys like me, and we're saying, you don't have to just sell your practice to a DSO. Could you? Yes, absolutely. There are times when it makes sense. But what I'll say is your legacy, a legacy practice in a town like Granbury, Texas, I don't really control what goes on in that practice that I've built for 35 years. I was fortunate that the group that bought me has done a great job, but there are some that don't. And you end up with a legacy practice that's not so much of a legacy anymore because you didn't get to choose the associates, the quality, the labs, all of those things. And so we're putting together a group of, I'm going to call not super dentists, but just really high-end investment grade practice doctors that are looking for associates and looking not just an associate, but a partner long-term. And I think if we can connect the dots, which is what we're planning on doing this year, we're going to see amazing opportunities for younger dentists. And I say younger in their career, not necessarily in age, but younger in their career to be able to get in a practice that they can become a legacy, in that practice as the old guy goes into his grandpa mode and you end up into full production mode, and then you bring in another younger dentist. I've practiced that way my entire career. I love it.
Thank you for joining me today on Investment Grade Practices. Your own podcast, The Productive Dentist, is one of the top 10 in our industry. People love you, and I am so blessed to be thinking partners with you. I think we really together bring some robust perspective to the marketplace. And I really appreciate your insights and the hope that you're bringing to both buyers and sellers. Independent practices are strong, alive, and well. And on a future podcast, I will bring in some experts that are on DSOs. There are some really compelling reasons to be a part of that. We're not anti anything, but we are very pro independent thinking. We're very pro choice, and we're very pro do your due diligence and discover what's possible, not just making decisions out of fear. So thank you for being here, Bruce.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thank you, Victoria.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Investment Grade Practices Podcast. If you find value in this episode, help us spread the word by passing it along to a dental friend, subscribe, and give us a like on iTunes or Spotify. Learn more about building your investment grade practice at productivedentist.com today.